YouTube, what is going on, guys? AA Ron here. We've got to talk. We've got to talk about the Minegumo here. One of two campaign ships available in this particular update with free Admiralty backing. All you have to do is go and click on it. You do have to select it in order to activate it. At that point, you complete the campaign and you get a choice of one of these two ships here, the Minegumo or the Njord. And we will, of course, do a video on the Njord there. But I have about 5 games, I think, in her so far. And you guys couldn't pay me to play her right now. I truly hate the ship. Now, I do need to give her that adjustment break-in period. But I don't like her. However, I do like the Minegumo, so that's the one we're going to talk about. I have a bunch of good games in her. Here's a brief little overlook of the stats here. Very good stats in terms of, 4 games is definitely not enough to really judge a ship on, but we're going to give her a first look, and out of the two right now, if I had to choose one, it would definitely be the Minegumo. It feels like a Hayate with a little bit different skill set or consumable set there, which does give you some versatility in that regard. And let's go ahead and review it here, starting off with our modifications. Aiming system mod 1, propulsion in slot 2, and let's go ahead and hide my giant head here. Concealment in slot 3, and we went with reload in slot 4. For the build I currently have on it, you probably would want torpedo reload as opposed to gun reload, but yeah, it's all the same. I'm kind of, the build I have doesn't necessarily greatly work with this, but yeah, anyway. Consumables, and this is where the ship is really unique. HE, AP, and the torpedoes, which do hit like a truck. 9-kilometer range, though, and a 79 knot speed. We'll go over those a little bit more in just a second. The short smoke generators here, similar to the British. 40-second dispersion time with a 10-second duration and a 60-second reload time. So very similar to the British smoke screens where you can pop them, get a few shots in and then move along. You are not the fastest, but you do get access to an engine boost, and you do have a torpedo reload booster, or 2 of them rather. It is a 360-second reload time, so honestly, I try to use it early game. We have a good little use of it early game. In one of these clips here, I might throw that in, but for the game that we are going to use for a majority of this video, we are using the gunboat build, which we'll talk about the differences in a second. But in terms of the specs, 17,400 health, not quite enough to fully gunboat, but because I said that in my little first look teaser video, I just wanted to run a gunboat to spite the people who said it wouldn't be a good gunboat. Now, it's not a great gunboat, and let's go ahead and switch to Kurita here so we can get more of the gunboat stats. But yeah, with the gunboat stats, 3.2 reload, the range hurts a little bit, 10.7, and the 180 turn time is 11 seconds, which is a lot better than it was listed on the PC version. I think it was like 30 seconds or 40 something. So to be fair to the person who said that it wasn't going to be a great gunboat because of that, they were sort of correct. Now, again, with the gunboat build, you have 130-second reload time. On your torps, they do 20,000 or almost 21,000 damage there. 9-kilometer range, 75 knot speed. Now, with the torpedo build, with Tanaka here, with subsurface venture, we don't have back in stock, but because truthfully, you really need perceptive. But let's go ahead and look at what this would be in terms of the torpedoes. So 104-second reload with a 22,000 max damage and a 79 knot speed. So again, you couple that with a 4-second reload, and this ship can be, pretty dangerous. Your AA defense is truly abysmal. That is one area where the ship will suffer. On top of that, her max speed is only 35 knots. Turning circle and rudder shift are decent, in terms of destroyers, but that top speed does hurt you a little bit. Detectability 5 kilometers with sort of that full concealment build, with Look at Me Now, Eric Bay, and Swirsky, which is just my typical IJN build. With, I think, Kurita, do I have either? Yeah, I have Mordov and Bay, so just keep that in mind for this video. This is the build that we were running. So Rage, Look at Me Now, Twist and Track, and Smoke on the Water. We went Twist and Track instead of Perceptive. However, I probably need to switch to Perceptive due to your overall health, but again, it's sort of like a mixed bag because you have the 6 smoke screens, so you just kind of got to put the ship in the right spot. But she does feel good. So going over, like I said, our stats, this is definitely not enough games to draw a conclusion from. However, pretty good so far, even by Aaron standards for torpedo accuracy. So we will give her the full range here. But armor, your tin can, your destroyer, and then there is your overview. So yeah, just a good looking boat here. Beside, I don't know, I like more guns in the front, but that's just me. But if you can get into a sort of kited position there, the Japanese 127s, especially on like, the torpedo boat line, they actually do a good amount of damage. The issue with most of them is they have like a pretty long reload, but 3.2 reload is not long. It is to some people, and some might say even above average, but 3.2, no, just kidding. But with the quicker reloads of these 127s here, you do get a good chunk of alpha damage. On top of that, 9% fire chance. It feels like it's more than that, but because you're firing every 3.2 seconds, you do get a good amount of fires. So that is a good little quick look at the Minegumo here, and we're going to get into the gameplay, and we'll announce that video for you guys in just a second. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Our very first game in the Minegumo here, and of course this was on the new map loop on update day, so you can only imagine what tomfoolery ensued. But sort of talking about the strategy portion of this map first, and then we'll get into the destroyer sort of tips and tricks that I like to give on some of these videos here. This map loop here, as you can see, has a bunch of small islands sort of spaced around it. Utilizing those islands is going to be absolutely essential if you want to do well, basically in any game, but especially on this map here. You will notice both teams sort of fishbowl or toilet bowl or black hole, whatever you want to call it. Our group at A sort of takes about 4 or 5 ships straight up the A flank. And while they did secure the victory, it's only partly due to the fact that the enemy destroyer decides to kite them north. On top of us also kiting the enemy a little bit south. So when this happens, you have to read it sort of before it happens. And somebody the other day, I think it was Senna or somebody, said you always need to be 2 steps ahead of your enemy. That may have been Vlad when we were casting a competitive tournament here. But getting into our sort of strategy portion of this video, we were the destroyer that spawned at the Bravo cap. So that's the cap that we're going to go to. It's sometimes, easy, or, it may be the decision that you want to take your destroyer wide, but just go to the closest cap, secure that cap, and then, get the flank or do whatever you want to do. As a destroyer, it is your responsibility to cap, to spot, and then to try and hunt the enemy destroyers in support of your other surface ships. Now, as the other surface ships, it is absolutely your job to try and support your destroyer, when he is doing those tasks. Now, you will notice that we did have some torpedoes, and I believe it was a Småland on the enemy team, and those torpedoes look pretty fast, so we are assuming that the Småland is in this region. We do take our single-fire torpedoes and our reload booster, and we are just zoning some torpedoes right now. Throwing these torpedoes around this island corner here, we're guessing that the destroyer probably, potentially popped, his torps, and then he went, east around this corner here. Following your twist and track is always a good idea, and there is no greater feeling than hitting a set of these zoning torpedoes. Now, because these only have a 9-kilometer range here, you're not going to be getting as much, early game hits unless you really push in there. But making sure that you are also aware of zoning torpedoes. We already saw one set go by, and knowing that the Pan-European destroyers typically have about a 60-second reload or 70-second for depending on the build and such. Just kind of knowing things like that is only going to help you in the long run. Now, you don't have to know every ship stat and things like that. There are plenty of people who know all that who still suck at the game. They're typically in the comment sections griping at other people who are playing the game. But anyway, here's a good example of early map control as well. We had no contesting from that enemy destroyer. We get an easy cap. On top of that, we did do some spotting, and there is the enemy destroyer. Anytime he's spotted, you want to shoot at him. But because now we have these caps, we can do whatever we want. And I just don't understand destroyer players who avoid the caps. It's just like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's so bad because when you get those caps,
you are now free to do whatever you want as our team gives the enemy team an early advantage. We had 2 ships rush into Charlie against, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ships over there at Charlie. And you can see our A flank is taking their sweet time over there at Alpha. So knowing this, we can now set up the trap. We have the Bravo cap, okay? So if the enemy wants to be successful, they will have to take one or both of these caps here. Now, we're probably going to lose the C cap, and this is often something that destroyer players who are trying to play the right way maybe don't necessarily understand. I'm not going to sacrifice much, if any, of my health for this Charlie cap here. Meaning, despite, the enemy pushing into it, it's contested right now, but that ship is going to go down. I am not going to lose my life trying to keep this cap. You'll notice, right, there was a Buffalo there. That is an American cruiser with a 9-kilometer radar. 9 to 9.5 to 9.9 is a good rule of thumb. Now, we know that the Buffalo is 9, but if you don't exactly know, just say 10 kilometers, and that way you'll be safe. We pop our smoke right on the edge of that radar range, 10.2, 9.5. So that way, when the enemy ships push towards us, we can safely get out of that range there. Now, we launched a sort of a narrow spread of the single fire torps, and we do manage to get lucky with one of them. It's always a good idea to just separate them out. Now, the wide spread for this torps, I would honestly choose the single fire a majority of the time because of how wide the wide spread is. But you couple that with your reload booster, and in certain situations, that is going to be more beneficial for you. Now, here was honestly a little bit of a mistake. As soon as that Atlantico goes down, I decide to shoot at the Flandre here. And for some reason, I don't know. I wanted to shoot. I wanted to get the reset. He was a little bit lower, and he does actually take another salvo. We do manage to catch a fire. And if you notice, we only have about, 30 shell hits and 2 fires already. So decent fire chance from what I noted. And the good news is we do have our short duration smoke screens back already, but in that slight, it's honestly a misstep here. We lost 7,000 health, about 40% of our health there in that quick little engagement. And honestly, as you should. Anytime a destroyer is spotted, if you're not shooting at him as, like a capital ship, then you have no right to complain when that destroyer comes back and torps you. But here's what I was talking about with that widespread. It's just too wide for me in most situations. Now, of course, if you don't know where the enemy ships are going, go ahead and just take the widespread out, and it's a lot better to throw out a wider surface area, in my opinion, than it is to chuck 8 torpedoes down the same narrow path that the single fire selection gives you. Because by the time that this ship makes it, what is the time to target there? 40 seconds. By the time that the torpedoes and the ship meet up on the projected path, in a situation like this, when there are ships, to the north or the northwest of them, as well as the south east of them, their direction is going to change multiple times. Now, here is a little bit of a misplay. I probably should have kept spotting for this anchorage, but I thought that a few of these ships might have been in their smoke firing penalty. But the good news is we have multiple smoke screens here, so you can just pop a few, take a few shots, and then get out of that situation. And here's a great example, right, of just that wide spread when there are multiple targets in your range or that spread. We did miss the Buffalo, but we managed to get one on the Vanguard there. And one of these torps doing 20,000 damage and causing a flood is going to be a lot more influential than, saving the torpedoes or getting that perfect spread of, 8 single fire torpedoes into the dead midsection of a ship. When you get that one torpedo hit even, you can follow it up typically with a fire, or at least a good chance to set a fire with the short duration smoke screens. Having 6 of them, you just pop one of them, you throw a few HE shells, and you can relocate. So it's always just a good little 1-2 punch with the short duration smoke screens. That is honestly why the British destroyers are so effective. Of course, that they have some fast firing guns and of course access to the sonar. So one thing to keep in mind though, a lot of players honestly forget this, is smoke screens are torpedo magnets. And considering, like we just mentioned, the British have that sonar and you don't, as a Japanese destroyer, you need to be careful, sort of sitting in them for too long. Now, because of how short they are, you typically, in most cases, won't run into that problem, but just something to be aware of as a destroyer player. And right here is honestly a perfect storm, scenario. We have a slow-moving American battleship moving towards us. We managed to catch a single fire on him. When you have torpedoes on target, you don't want to, if you're sailing broadside to them and they, you have their side and they maybe don't know you're there, you don't want to give up your position, as we managed to catch one in the side of that Kansas there. You don't want to shoot and give up your position, but when a ship is coming at you like this, you can do that because they already know where you are and you're sailing towards them. So and the reason we're doing that is we want to catch that fire, and as soon as we catch that fire, we want them to damage con it. Because we have torpedoes on the way, imagine if that Kansas would have damage conned that fire, we now would have had a permanent flood. Now, I do believe he is still flooding and on fire anyway, so because of this, we are going to switch to the AP as we manage to connect another torpedo on that Tirpitz. And as we just mentioned, this is essentially a perfect scenario for this boat. We have two ships coming towards us within range of our torpedoes. We have a few of our smoke screens left. We have a few other ships available to spot, and on top of that, the Kansas decides to throw a blind fire, so we connected a few torpedoes on the Kansas there, a permanent fire, and again, we are just maximizing our damage output here. I would also like to note we did switch to the AP for a brief moment there. It appears as if, I'm not exactly sure if that Kansas was still flooding and or on fire. And when that happens, like if you have a double fire especially, and you have its broadside, even if it's at long range and the gun caliber is really low, switch to the AP. In today's game, most battleship captains, if they have half of a brain, are using fight fire with fire. And if you know what that trait does, when you get the third fire on the ship, it will automatically damage con all fires. So instead of just trying to specifically aim at the bow or stern of a ship or wherever the section of the ship that doesn't have a fire, trying to get that third one, if you switch to the AP and they're already on a double fire, you are not only taking that double fire, but any potential overpen damage you are getting in the superstructure, as well as any potential chunk damage that you may or may not be getting on the main belt of whatever battleship you are shooting at. So again, you're just trying to maximize, all, scenarios, right? It's just like, having stocks and running a business or something. You want to maximize all earning potential. You know what I mean? So it's just a way of life in this game to, have torpedoes on target, have a ship on fire, be shooting AP at the broadside of that ship. Now, something I also want to mention, it's a mistake I made tonight on stream. If you guys watch me on stream in the Daring, when you have the single fire torpedo option, fire all of the torpedoes or none of the torpedoes. Do not leave one loaded in the tube. The other torpedoes will not reload. So let's say, for example, that we were to fire 3 out of the 4 torpedoes in this rack here. We would be sitting with 1 torpedo and 3 not loaded, which is a stupid, stupid way to play this ship, or any ship for that matter. I saw, it was a video a long time ago, I saw somebody do that, and it's just like, you're really only hurting yourself. I think I don't know if I do it in this game. I've watched this back a couple times now, but I know that I did it tonight in the Daring, and when I catch myself doing that, it's just like, what are you doing here? Now, for this specific scenario, I'm waiting for the Kansas. But again, like I said, don't leave that single tube, as you guys just saw it there in the launcher. It's sort of, when you have the single fire option, it gives you like a percentage of the white circle that lets you know that the two torpedoes or guns are ready to fire there. Also, in terms of the strategy portion left of this game, our team finally managed to get the eliminations over there at Alpha. But in the meantime, we have dealt with essentially 1/3, if not more, of the enemy fleet on this side. the defend ribbon, the 2 solo caps, I only got 1 spotting ribbon, but I feel like that's because the enemy half YOLO'd into the cap there, has essentially secured the victory for our team. So instead of chasing this Kansas, we went into the cap, and yes, I do miss out on 10,000 damage in a kill, but by getting this cap, again, if you ever watched the NFL or certain, sports where they have the statistics like this team has a 20% chance to win at this point, or it's crazy when you watch some of those comebacks in sports, but teams have had like a 95% chance to win and then they run a wrong play or something. But I see that far too often in this game. Like in a situation like this, there's no reason to go after this battleship. Yes, I can cheese a little bit more damage, but with a destroyer still on the board and us being up 600 points, the surefire play here is to just simply sail off into the sunset. Now, given the circumstances, yeah, you could probably shoot. We had a smoke screen left, things like that, but you will see one-on-one situations where there's like a destroyer that all he has to do is remain undetected and like run away for 90 seconds, and players just don't understand that. Now granted, this is a video game where it doesn't mean anything, but when your results affect other players, I feel like there is some level of sportsmanship that we need to maintain. Like, hey, we're gonna try and win this game. But that was a pretty good little first game in the Minegumo there. I feel like I got a little robbed on XP, but we didn't get any damage on that destroyer. Only 1 defend ribbon, and no high caliber, but 100,000 damage in a destroyer is always a bonus. A good rule of thumb is doing enough damage matching your HP worth of damage. So about 20,000 in a destroyer, because if every ship matches their HP, typically the spawns are mirrored or the ship lineup is mirrored, you guys will win. So that's just a general rule of thumb, but 2,700 first place finish there. 2 solo caps, a good number of kills, a few spots, and a defend there. But yeah, that's the Minegumo. We have a few other games. Like I said, I'd much prefer this ship over the Njord, but we will give her a good review as well. But that's all. That's going to do it for this one. I love you guys. Have a great night. I'm out. Peace.